joining us. You're so welcome to be with us today for this webinar on teacher professional development in crisis contexts. This event is part of a series being organised by INEE's Teachers in Crisis Context Collaborative, the LEGO Foundation, UNESCO Teacher Task Force, Education International and Oxfam. And if you'd like to find out further information about other events in the series, other activities and resources, please do take a look at the INEE website after the webinar. In just a moment, I'll be handing you over to some of the members of INEE's Teachers in Crisis Context Collaborative, who will be chairing this webinar today. But thank you all for joining us. We know this is a topic close to many of your hearts, and we know as a sector we need to be doing more and better to support teachers in this way. So we're delighted to see so many of you with us today, and we're so grateful for our panelists and presenters for joining us. Before we start, I'm just going to run through a few pieces of housekeeping for the webinar. So Andrew, if we could go to the next slide. Just a quick reminder, if you're joining us today, your audio and video are disabled, so don't worry, we can't hear you accidentally. And this just allows our presenters to have the mics, so you can hear the discussion as effectively as possible. You can, however, post questions anytime, and we love to hear from you. So at the bottom of your screen, you can find a Q&A function. Please do share your questions and we'll make sure to include those in the discussion. I also just want to remind you that the session is being recorded, and we will be sharing that along with the presentations via the INEE website, so you can find recordings of this event and all of our other events there. And lastly, closed captioning is available in English, and we are delighted to also be sharing this webinar with simultaneous interpretation in both French and English. So if we just move to the next slide, you will need to select your language to listen to today's webinar. So at the bottom of the screen, you'll see there is a globe symbol at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, you can then click on the language that you want to listen to. So please select either English or French. We are going to have a discussion with speakers from both languages. So you will need to select either English or French, and then make sure you mute original audio so you can hear clearly. But that's all of the housekeeping. I'm going to be handing you over to our moderators today. Chris Henderson joins us from Teachers College, and you'll hear from him shortly. But I'm first going to hand over to Charlotte Berquin, who joins us from UNHCR. Over to you, Charlotte, and thanks to everyone for joining us today.
Thanks, Charlotte. And hi, everyone. Welcome again to this webinar. So yes, my name is Charlotte. I work for UNHCR in West and Central Africa, and I'm also co-chairing this TiCC case study webinar series with Chris, series which aims at amplifying voices from the field through various case studies shared by a wide range of education practitioners working in crisis-affected settings. In today's webinar, we will explore why teacher professional development is essential and deserves a special attention, particularly in context of emergency, displacement, and crisis. We all know that if teachers are to be sufficiently and appropriately supported to improve the learning of the most vulnerable children in their classrooms, they must be trained on relevant topics according to their context and their specific needs. We all know that teacher professional development is key to providing quality, equitable and relevant education for all students, but we also need to acknowledge that there can never be a one-size-fits-all approach, especially not in crisis context. So contextualization and teacher involvement in the design and implementation of teacher professional development programs is essential, simply because teachers are the ones who know their needs and those of their students the best. This topic will be illustrated by our panelists for today in a discussion moderated by our great Chris Henderson, who is also the chair of the INEE Teacher in Crisis Context Collaborative. Today you will hear from Munia Islam Mozumder, who is working with Save the Children in Bangladesh, from April Kwetsi, working on teacher professional development for War Child in Palestine, but also in several countries, and from Professor Samuel Matabishi, who is working with teachers in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. They will all share their reflections on the challenges, lessons learned, and opportunities to support and improve teacher professional development in their own context. You will also hear from Grace, an IDP teacher in Nigeria, through a recording intervention. Without further ado, I wish you all a very good webinar, and I hand over to Danny, who will set up the scene before the presentations of our panelists. Enjoy the webinar.
Thank you so much, Charlotte and Charlotte. I'm really glad to be joining this webinar today and to see such a great turnout. If we could go to the next slide. I am going to help set the scene for teacher professional development in crisis contexts and repeat a bit of what Charlotte was just letting us know about the importance of TPD, teacher professional development in crisis context. We know that research demonstrates that teachers are key actors in ensuring the protection, well-being, and learning of children and youth. And this is especially true in contexts affected by conflict, crisis, and displacement, where teachers may be the only resource in a resource-poor environment, and frequently take on additional roles to that of educator, such as parasocial worker or caretaker. And teachers are doing this work in extraordinarily challenging environments, often with insufficient support. In fact, in these settings where TPD is arguably needed most, it continues to be sporadic, uncoordinated, and of varied quality. To better understand this issue, in the fall of 2020, the LEGO Foundation hired a team of researchers from Teachers College Columbia University, led by Dr. Mary Mendenhall and Dr. Vidor Chopra, to examine the challenges and opportunities for providing TPD, particularly that supports teachers' uptake of innovative pedagogies in refugee and host communities in East Africa. Today, I'm going to share some high-level findings that emerged from this research, which included a rigorous review of 189 resources and interviews with 37 key informants. This work was also supported by an incredible group of master's and doctoral students, some of whom are on this call: Dr. Jihye Cha, Chris Henderson, Emily Irvin, Jonathan Kwok, Tracy Jared, Charlotte Wright, and Suzanne Zudema. So as the visual on this slide represents, we have to understand TPD as a comprehensive set of interrelated activities, from pre and in-service training that refers to formal training teachers receive before they enter the profession and ongoing opportunities they receive as teachers, to continuous professional development, or CPD, in the form of supportive supervision, such as through coaching and mentoring, and communities of practice that foster mutual exchange of knowledge and encouragement among teachers within and across schools. When we think about the components and principles of quality TPD for teachers, we need to think within and across these interrelated activities. Our findings clearly demonstrate that teachers need comprehensive, contextually relevant, and continuous TPD that recognizes, responds to, and builds upon the strengths and needs of different profiles of teachers. This includes opportunities for teachers to participate in relevant and responsive TPD that takes into the consideration the context in which teachers live and work and their profiles and backgrounds, to observe modeling in TPD, where teacher educators or teacher trainers are modeling the types of skills and strategies they are hoping teachers take on in their classroom, and engage in experiential applied reflective practice during and post-training. And this is particularly important for teachers who are learning new strategies that they themselves may have never used as teachers or even experienced when they were learners themselves. It's also essential teachers have opportunities to receive supportive supervision and peer support In fact, all of the key informants in our study, as well as the majority of the literature, spoke to the critical importance of providing sustained support to teachers through ongoing training and continuous professional development after and in between teacher training sessions. And teachers must also have the opportunity to work towards professional certification and adequate compensation, including opportunities for career progression. And we know in refugee and host communities and in the humanitarian sector more generally, we have a challenge of providing numerous TPD opportunities that are frequently uncoordinated and disconnected from national education systems, which does not help teachers gain recognized credentials or financial support they need to continue making improvements to their teaching practices, to progress in their career, and also to provide for themselves and their families. Finally, we also know that quality TPD will be most successful when teachers are meaningfully involved throughout the process, from the design, implementation, and monitoring and evaluation of their own learning. Overall, improving TPD requires recognizing and investing in teacher strengths and responding to school-based and system-level challenges through contextualized and sustainable interventions. Before we hear our panelists on their experiences doing this work in Bangladesh, in the DRC, in Colombia, and Gaza, we have the chance to listen to Grace, a teacher who is working with internally displaced learners in northern Nigeria, and her reflections on the importance of teacher professional development in her context. So we can move on to the next slide, Andrew, and I'll turn it over to Grace.
Andrew, we don't hear any sound.
Okay, let me try.
If you go to your screen share settings, there's advanced, and then you can share computer audio as well.
Can you hear that?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I like my students because they are very friendly to me, and we used to play with them, work with them in the class. I love them. Majority of them, I'm so passionate about it because if I'm teaching them, they are responding to me, and they like me, I like them. So that's what makes me to be passionate. I face some challenges because the little ones, they are not passing any, but the big ones faster than the small ones. So if I will get another training, I would like it. I would like another training on how to continue teaching the learners, because these learners are non-formal education. They are from different places. It's not easy for me because they have different behaviors. So we are just managing it. But if you get another training, help us know how to. I want to teach continuously because I love children. I love children very much. So I want to see me with children. I'm teaching them. I'm helping them with the class. We are playing with them. I'm teaching them. They will respond. I like that. So I like. I used to put it in. So even they came with their body, if I put it in some play together with them, they will just forget everything and concentrate on it. I hope that some of them will become a doctor, a lawyer, and even a Nigerian president. I pray.
Fantastic. Welcome, everyone. It is amazing to see the huge diversity of people in the participant list, both in terms of geography and the types of work you're doing. So it's wonderful to have you here and wonderful to be able to champion the importance of teacher professional development together with all of you. It's my pleasure now to move on to the case studies. And my colleague from UNHCR, Charlotte, already introduced our presenters today. My name is Chris Henderson. I'm based at Teachers College, Columbia University. And I just want to reintroduce our presenters and then allow for them to provide a brief introduction to the work they're doing. And after that, we will move into a discussion focused around some key questions relating to their particular context. But I'll also invite each of you in the participant group to pose your questions either in the Q&A function or in the chat box. So once again, it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Samuel Matabishi, who represents Institut Supérieur Pédagogique in Bukavu in the Democratic Republic of Congo. He will present first. Following Professor Samuel, we'll have April Coetzee from War Child Holland. And finally, we'll have our colleague Munia Islam Mazumdar from talking about the Rohingya refugee crisis in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh. So Professor Samuel, Professor Matabishi, if I could invite you to first talk about the work you're doing in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and then we'll move on to April and Munia. So Professor, the floor is yours.
Oui, merci beaucoup pour la parole. Comme le dire Chris, je suis professeur Samuel Matabishi Namashunju. Je travaille comme professeur à l'Institut supérieur pédagogique de Bukavu. Je travaille en même temps avec IDS de l'Université de Sussex, avec des collaborateurs comme Gauthier, qui doit être en train de suivre aussi cette présentation, comme Cyril Brandet, comme Deborah West, mais aussi avec Madame Pamela. Je vais vous présenter pour intervenir dans ce webinaire. Je vais rapidement parler du développement des enseignants, du profession des enseignants plutôt dans des zones à conflit armés et non armés au Sud Kivu. Je vais commencer par dire que le développement professionnel des enseignants dans des zones à conflit armés et non armés constitue un véritable casse-tête. Pourquoi? Parce qu'il y a autant de problèmes. Ce développement est tributaire de beaucoup de facteurs, dont le principal pour la zone qui nous concerne demeure la formation des enseignants à l'éducation en situation d'urgence. Notre contribution va porter sur le développement des modules d'enseignement à l'éducation en situation d'urgence pour les instituts de formation des enseignants en République démocratique du Congo. Ces modules sont en train de se développer avec le projet BRIS. Le projet BRIS que nous développons depuis 2019 nous a permis de comprendre que les enseignants qui travaillent dans des contextes à haut risque, dans des zones avec beaucoup de conflits, traversent des moments très difficiles qui méritent une attention particulière. 3 défis majeurs nous guettent. Le premier défi est que le projet d'éducation dans de nombreux pays à faible revenu ont dispensé des formations, mais ces formations sont faites à petite échelle pour dire qu'elles n'atteignent pas beaucoup de personnes et parfois sans moyen de suivi après les différentes formations. Le deuxième défi est que les formations se sont concentrées plus sur l'assistance psychosociale et sur l'éducation sensible au conflit. Le troisième défi, qui est aussi majeur, est que les curricula, les programmes de cours dans les institutions de formation des enseignants, les établissements d'enseignement universitaire au niveau supérieur, des formations des enseignants ne tiennent pas en compte du contexte des conflits dans lesquels évoluent les écoles. Or, la province du Sud Kivu, qui est notre zone d'investigation, comme on peut le comprendre, et comme beaucoup d'autres zones de l'Est de la RDC, sont proies aux conflits armés et non armés, ayant des conséquences néfastes sur les relations humaines et sur la vie scolaire et universitaire. D'où des opportunités qui doivent s'offrir à nous. La principale est de dire que réfléchir à des opportunités de changement et d'amélioration des pratiques d'enseignement adaptées au contexte d'urgence paraît plus qu'important. Alors, pour y parvenir, une stratégie mérite d'être mise en place. C'est celle de travailler sur le développement d'un module d'enseignement de l'enseignement supérieur, de l'enseignement en situation d'urgence qui est généralisable aux instituts de formation des enseignants en RDC et pourquoi pas au niveau du monde, au niveau international. L'ISP de Bukavu, avec Institute of Development Studies, IDS, de l'Université de Sussex, en collaboration avec l'ONG internationale Save the Children, travaille sur ces modules. Le module est en voie d'être présenté et ce module va permettre à ce qu'on puisse contourner cette difficulté. Quel est l'objectif de ces modules? L'objectif est d'institutionnaliser une vision plus critique et plus réflexive de l'éducation en situation d'urgence dans des instituts de formation des enseignants en RDC afin de renforcer la résilience des enseignants face aux réalités auxquelles ils sont confrontés quotidiennement dans leurs écoles et dans les milieux ambiants où ils évoluent. Pour y arriver, il faut quand même comprendre qu'il y a deux principes qui nous guident. Le premier principe que nous allons tirer des travaux d'autres chercheurs est que pour former les praticiens engagés, réflexifs et conscients d'eux-mêmes, qui possèdent ces compétences, la formation des enseignants doit préparer les enseignants à critiquer les hypothèses sous-jacentes en encourageant la discussion et le débat en s'appuyant sur leurs propres expériences. Le deuxième principe, extrait aussi des recherches qui sont menées dans ce domaine, est que les politiques et les pratiques éducatives ont toujours été résistantes à l'engagement civique et cela nous permet d'avancer pour que nous réussissions à faire travailler les gens sur leurs propres expériences. Et donc, les enseignants jouent un rôle unique pour diriger l'avenir de la scolarisation dans des endroits profondément touchés par le traumatisme et par la division. C'est dans ce cas que se trouve la République démocratique du Congo par rapport au développement professionnel des enseignants, ce qui rend parfois difficile le développement professionnel des enseignants. Comme on va y revenir dans le panel avec les différentes questions, nous réussirons alors à travailler et pour cela, nous avons essayé de développer aujourd'hui, de mettre en place ce qu'on appelle l'Observatoire congolais du plurilinguisme pour le développement et l'éducation. Parce qu'il y a aussi beaucoup de langues qui sont parlées. Comment on chemine avec les langues, avec les différentes communautés qui parlent plusieurs langues, comment on trouve un trait d'union entre ces communautés pour que l'éducation et le développement professionnel des enseignants puissent se développer et contribuer, je vais dire, à l'évolution de l'enseignement et que chacun se sente très à l'aise. Et donc, je vais m'arrêter par là en attendant les questions parce que je n'ai que 4 minutes. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Professor Matabishi. We're so pleased to have you here, and thank you for that very comprehensive and insightful overview. Next, April, my friend and colleague from War Child, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, from wherever you are in the world. I'm going to talk a bit about teacher wellbeing intervention that we have been working on at War Child. The case study is set in Colombia and Gaza, and in Gaza we only really were able to do the formative work before we had to stop because of COVID and schools being closed. But I'm going to talk a bit about the learning around that. But just to begin, the intervention is called CORE, and it looks both at teachers' wellbeing, but also at building the social emotional competencies of teacher. And it does this through coaches who are based in schools with the teachers, with around 90% of the activities being done during school time in the classroom, and is done over 6 modules over a 3-month period, so every 2 weeks. Starting with wellbeing workshops, really to look at some approaches to managing and identifying emotions, conflict resolution, stress reduction, and then moves into a support cycle which continues, which starts with learning around social emotional competencies and goal setting, practicing some of those activities in the classroom and in life, observation by the coaches, and then time to reflect before that cycle repeats. But in this presentation, I really want to talk a bit more about the principles that look at not only what are we doing with CORE, but how are we doing it? And they relate very much back to what the previous speakers have all spoken about. And I think when we think about teacher professional development, and in our case, teacher wellbeing, these are as important as what we do. So for us in CORE, and these have been built from formative work and work that we've done with teachers, really to get their ideas on what they feel is important in the process of doing these interventions. So the first thing is that we are totally teacher focused. So this intervention is only about the teachers and not about what the teachers can pass on to the children. Of course, ultimately, we expect that changes in teachers' well-being and social emotional competencies will have a positive impact on classroom climate and help create an enabling environment that is compassionate and safe for children to learn and also improve their well-being. But we are only looking and working directly with the teachers about themselves. We're looking at a whole school approach, and by that we are meaning we are working with all the teachers at the same time and the head teacher, so that you are building a community of practice and support. You are normalizing being able to talk about wellbeing issues, being able to understand the challenges. You're also normalizing some of those social emotional competencies and the way of working for the children and the teachers in the school culture. And you're allowing teachers to be able to explore new ways of working without it seeming strange or different because only a few teachers are doing it. We're investing in quality coaching. As I said, the work is done by coaches working with teachers in schools, and we're looking at probably 1 coach to 12 teachers, so it's quite intensive. But we're working with non-specialist coaches. So part of our process is that we believe that we really need to invest in those coaches to make sure that they can really be coaches and not supervisors or trainers, but really work in partnership with the teachers, being able to push a little when maybe it's needed, being able to pull teachers back and reflect a bit more when it's needed. And so for that, we invest in quite a lot of training and supervision for the coaches. We're looking at it that it's individualized. So as much as possible, we try and have, we individualize the process. We are looking as part of the wellbeing where we will work with teachers to identify a value system around what they see as a good teacher. So what kind of teacher do they want to be? If we talk about quality teaching, how do they see themselves as a professional in their relationship with the students, in relationship with their colleagues, and in relationship with themselves as a teacher? And then we can start to work with them as much as possible and as individual as possible to meet those value systems and to have positive actions towards that. The fifth one is that it's iterative. So it's a repeat cycle with the idea that you are building confidence in the teacher, you're building their self-efficacy and belief in themselves as each module goes round and they get more and more used to the process. And they can see their successes, they can see that if there are challenges, they can overcome them, or at least look at them in a different way. The hope is that you then have a bit of a tipping point that can also tip into other professional development. And these skills will be useful if you're looking at other technical skills, or there's a workshop that they go to, or training that they can bring those skills when putting new ideas into the classroom. And actually, sorry, there's one that's missing off here, which is really important, which is also reflective. So really important to build a reflective practice in teachers, that they do look at their process, they do look at their practice, they do look at how they are as a teacher, reflect back on their value systems around what kind of teacher they think they want to be. And then also, as I said, celebrate their successes, but also be able to look at what was challenging for them in the classroom and how they can, how can they address this. And for us, we think these things are as important as then the work that you're actually going to do with the teachers. And I think that's my 4 minutes up, Chris. Thank you.
Four minutes on the spot. Thank you so much, April. And yeah, next, last but not least, it's my pleasure to introduce Munia Islam Mazumder from Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh. Munia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you. Good evening from Bangladesh. So today I'm going to present the TPD model that we have actually practiced here in Rohingya response in Bangladesh. First of all, I would like to say that we actually mark this professional development initiative, and we actually have done a series of training, but here for the case study I'm taking one training that we have actually conducted, which is called foundation training in the Rohingya response, which involved all the education implementing partner of Cox's Bazar education sector. And this training was implemented by Save the Children and supported by UNICEF. The training was based on various knowledge, attitude, CAP study, and teacher competency assessment, sectoral meeting, and classroom monitoring. And here you are seeing that we have like this amount of beneficiaries, around 4 lakh children right now in Rohingya camp, and we have 8,778 teachers across the Rohingya response. So this training was aimed for improving teachers' competencies and teaching quality through professional development initiative across agencies in different camps. So basically the idea was we actually trained the master trainers directly. So 172 master trainers were trained through this TPD model. And then the master trainers actually cascaded the training for 713 resource teachers. And then the resource teachers actually shared the learning of the TPD with the peer teachers. So this was the total model. So we provided direct teaching, supportive material, monitoring, and continuous support to the teacher and the teacher educators so that they can actually bring improved learning outcome for the students. And here I would like to say that we actually provided this huge training for this huge amount of teachers and teacher educators throughout the COVID period. So this was basically an emergency within an emergency, I would like to say. So our knowledge dissemination and sharing has gone through lots of challenges and lessons learned that we have confronted. Here I would like to say that like all the sector partners in Cox's Bazar education sectors actually participated and wholeheartedly supported this initiative. Otherwise, we couldn't ever reach this much of teachers. And in this modality, in December, we have actually directly in December 2021, in December 2020, we actually provided training to the master trainers in 10 batches in face-to-face modality. And then we actually provided them online training as well in the same module on curriculum, on pedagogy, teachers' well-being. Then their referral pathways was also there. And also we actually provided lots of ways for mindfulness, since these teachers actually experienced severe trauma back in their country in Myanmar. So we actually tried to design the foundation training in a blended approach with pedagogical aspect, and at the same time with their wellness and mindfulness activities. And finally, what we have seen that this training for teachers was actually provided to the master trainers that we have provided back in December. We then provided it in a different model in e-learning passport, which was a unique passport of UNICEF for uploading the online material. But we have faced several problems over there, because the master trainers who actually received the training in online, they also faced difficulties while accessing the training, because most of them were actually living in a low bandwidth area. And surprisingly, what we have also seen this self-paced online training was kind of an unprecedented mode of learning for the master trainers, and they actually lack of ICT interventions actually created more hindrances in this training actually. So finally, after receiving and ending the training, we got 100% attendance from all 172 master trainers, and we have had reflection session in online, since at that time a hard lockdown was going on in Bangladesh. So after that, we went through, when the lockdown was little eased, we went to face-to-face training, both in host community and Rohingya community, to support the 713 teachers. So at that time, we found some interesting outcome over there. Say, for example, like when we actually went to implementing those training, we have found that due to COVID, there were lots of teachers who actually shifted their career in other sectors, like health sectors and others. So we actually lost lots of qualified teachers, and due to COVID, they actually lacked peer support from each other. So they changed their professions in some extent. So when we actually arranged the training, they again reunited and took the training. So it was kind of a support system for the teachers as well. We also have seen that sometimes language barrier causes like learning loss, because in Rohingya context, one Rohingya teacher actually support another national teacher in the classroom, so that the national teacher, host community teacher, can support the students in the classroom in their own language. So in that case, Rohingya teacher was also got the same training that the national teacher got through this teacher professional development initiative. So this is how we actually tried to provide unified curriculum for all the teachers, both the national teacher and the Rohingya teacher. And we have also seen that the continuing professional development for huge number of teachers that we have adopted, both in face-to-face and online modality was sometimes a bit challenging because like shifting modality due to COVID was even more challenging at that time. So these were actually challenge. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, Munia,
Please.
but just because of time, and since you are on continuous professional development and challenges, it's a great time to transition to a bigger discussion.
Right.
But yeah, thank you so much.
So
Tanya.
I was just at the end of the topic, actually. Thank you. So yeah, those were the lessons that we have learned throughout the journey. Thank you, Chris.
Wonderful. Danya Bazar. Let's bring everyone back on screen, April and Professor Samuel also, and we can start the panel discussion. But yeah, once again, merci beaucoup, and thank you for your presentations. You all touched on this issue, but what do you think is the biggest challenge in your context around continuous quality professional development? How would you describe those challenges? And perhaps Professor Samuel, if we start with you. Are you there, Professor Matabishi?
Oui, je suis là.
Ah, très bien.
Oui.
So,
hello.
So what do you think in your context is the biggest challenge to continuous quality professional development?
D'accord. Les défis spécifiques sont majeurs par rapport au contexte dans lequel nous nous trouvons. Je peux énumérer au moins le plus saillant, parmi lesquels on peut prendre les bas salaires. Les salaires des enseignants sont très bas parce que quand il n'y a pas de dynamique motivationnelle qui permettent à ce que les enseignants puissent travailler, il y a un problème au niveau du développement professionnel. Il y a le problème des classes pléthoriques. Vous avez retrouvé un enseignant avec une classe de plus de 90 élèves. C'est impensable, 90 élèves. Il y a la pénurie de matériel pédagogique. Il n'y a pas de matériel sur le plan didactique. L'enseignant se débrouille tant bien que mal pour essayer de faire comprendre telle ou telle notion à ses élèves, surtout que un élément important à retenir, il donne cours, les cours sont dispensés dans une langue étrangère aux apprenants, c'est-à-dire la langue française. Vous avez un élève qui parle 4 ou 3 langues au village avant de rejoindre l'école. Quand il arrive à l'école, on commence à lui apprendre tout en français, une langue étrangère qui n'est pas, je veux dire, adapté à son contexte linguistique. Ça, c'est un grand blocage pour que les enseignants puissent aller plus loin et puissent aider les apprenants. Eux-mêmes maîtrisent mal la même langue parce qu'ils ont plusieurs langues qu'ils apprennent, mais en même temps, une langue presque approximative. Tout cela crée un certain nombre de problèmes. À part ce défi linguistique lié à la fois au matériel didactique, mais aussi à la langue de l'enseignement, il y a des salles de cours qui sont délabrées et peu de possibilités de développement professionnel, bien évidemment. Par rapport à ces défis, on constate aussi ce qu'on appelle des intenses vagues de violence et de déplacement depuis près de 30 ans. Nous avons des enseignants qui sont dans des zones où, à tout moment, on peut les déplacer, on peut déclencher une guerre, ils sont obligés de se déplacer à plusieurs endroits, déplacer les élèves et les écoles qui sont fermées à maintes reprises. Cela crée beaucoup de problèmes. Ce débat que nous avons constaté déjà du côté avec Save the Children à Fizi et à Ouvira, parce qu'on travaille conjointement avec Save the Children. Je remercie rapidement Munia qui a bien présenté le contexte dans lequel elle travaille au Bangladesh. Mais quand même avec Save, nous travaillons, on fait un grand travail.
Can I use this as an opportunity? Just so we can get through the different contexts. Yeah, thank you for sharing. But perhaps April, how do you think the biggest challenge to continuous quality professional development plays out in the context you work in?
I think what Professor Samuel said about terms benefits for teachers is true, but I also think there's a real lack of investment in continuous professional development for teachers. And for me, that slightly errs on the side of a lack of respect for teachers as human beings, right? They always just seem to be vessels to get to children. And alongside that investment comes this idea that learning takes time. It's like we are educators and we understand that education happens over a number of years, but we don't want to invest in that in teachers' learning. It's got to happen within a week. It often happens outside of the school time because it takes a bit more investment. So for me, I think that's definitely one of the key challenges. And I think the other thing is also making sure that teachers are involved in that professional development and in setting that agenda. So it is something that they feel is valuable, whether it's teacher well-being, whether it's subject knowledge, whatever it is, that they also have part of that process in being able to set that agenda and meet the needs that they feel they have.
And Munir, how about you? I mean, teachers in Cox's Bazar confront numerous challenges for which professional development is just one of them. But yeah, how do you think we achieve continuous and quality professional development?
So what we actually faced, like recently, we are seeing, while collecting data for resource teachers across the camp, we are seeing that like male and female ratio is extremely low, and for teacher educators as well across the sector for many positions, including technical specialists, training specialists, field officer. So I think like maintaining gender balance in terms of like quality teaching, and since like we have half of the learners who are actually female, so in a protracted nature of the crisis context, if you cannot provide female teachers, female educators, equity can never be happened. So this was like one of the challenge that I want to flag. And another challenge was like teachers' professional development is like varying from organization to organization, and like maintaining unified curriculum and maintaining unified teachers' professional training was one of the like key challenges that we are facing. Because regardless of organizational support, students should get the like best learning outcome, right? The best teaching outcome the student should experience in the classroom setup. So I mean, unified teacher training, regardless of organizations, should be ensured so that like students' learning can also be happened in a unified way, like regardless of who the teachers are from which organizations, because like for teachers' competencies, students' learning cannot be hindered, right? So in that case, I think for ensuring quality training for huge number of teachers is one of the key challenges in my context, actually. Yeah.
Cool. So I'll bring you back in a second, April, but just to sort of summarize that, I mean, Professor Matabishi, you're talking about some of these challenges around teachers' locations, their transients, and the difficulty of accessing quality TPD. I mean, April, you powerfully made the point that we don't see teachers as respected professionals, and there is a corresponding lack of investment in that sense. And I really like your point, Munir, around regardless of the organization delivering teacher professional development, we need there to be consistency and a standard that's unified across the different opportunities and interventions. So April, what were you going to come in and say before I summarized?
No, it's fine. I just wanted to build on what Munir said about having a consistent curriculum. I think there's also something around certification, right? And validation for the work that teachers, and that goes hand in hand with this, that yeah, that there's something that they can take away, and there is professional growth for those teachers based on that continuous professional development as well.
So I'm just looking at the time, and I really want to privilege questions from our participants. And we've got one brilliant question here from Fatoumata Dembele from Mali, who asks that, in Mali at the moment, many schools are closed closed due to insecurity. And Fatoumata represents a teacher association and is asking, how can we best support teachers in areas where the network is not good, they cannot connect into online or blended opportunities, they are out of reach from teacher associations who deliver professional development. I mean, how do we address the need of those teachers? In your experience, are there any particular approaches to ensure quality teacher professional development? Yeah, Professor Matabishi, I mean, I think this might relate to some of what you were saying about teachers being at a distance from professional development. What are your thoughts on this?
Oui, merci beaucoup pour la question, comment on peut valoriser le travail des enseignants, comment on peut faire pour les enseignants qui sont dans des milieux reculés. Voilà pourquoi je parlais d'un casse-tête. Je pense qu'avec une association qui permettrait à ce que les enseignants puissent travailler tous en collaboration, c'est-à-dire les enseignants de la ville qui iraient par exemple former, aider et apporter leur appui aux enseignants de la campagne, mais cela demande qu'il y ait des moyens. Et le moyen signifie qu'il faut que le gouvernement prenne conscience, parce que d'un côté, il y a le travail fait par les organisations non gouvernementales, mais de l'autre côté, il faut qu'il y ait un travail d'accompagnement politique qui va permettre à ce que le travail qui est fait par les organisations non gouvernementales, à l'instar de Save the Children et les autres, et l'UNICEF, il faut qu'il y ait cet accompagnement. S'il n'y a pas d'accompagnement, on va former et après, les gens vont se retrouver en train de reprendre les mêmes habitudes parce qu'il n'y aura pas, je vais dire, des suivis sur le plan gouvernemental des gens qui sont au travail, qui accompagnent quotidiennement les enseignants. Je crois que c'est un travail de synergie. Il faut que les efforts soient conjugués de tous côtés, qu'on ne puisse pas attendre seulement les organisations internationales non gouvernementales ou gouvernementales qui viennent donner l'appui parce qu'on ne peut pas développer un pays, y compris l'enseignement, avec des projets. Le projet, il est temporaire. D'ailleurs, c'est pour ça qu'on parle d'urgence. L'urgence, on la conçoit pour un besoin et après, on va partir et à la fin, on revient à la case de départ. Je crois que c'est ce que je peux donner comme réponse aux participants qui viennent du Mali. Je suis conscient parce qu'on est presque dans un même sens, mais il faut que les efforts soient conjugués, surtout la prise de conscience. Il faut qu'il y ait un éveil de conscience pour permettre à ce que les gens puissent prendre certaines choses à main. Voilà ce que je peux donner comme réponse. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Professor. And I think you've said it so powerfully that projects are temporary, and yet we view teacher professional development as a project. And so by nature, it tends to be a short-term activity. We have another great question from our audience here from Raju Ahmed, who I believe is based in South Sudan. And April, I'm going to come to you for this one because it feels like something you speak very well about, which is teachers' holistic development. So how much of teacher professional development includes their holistic development?
Yeah, you're right, Chris. That is something that is quite a passion of mine. I mean, I think often teacher professional development has missed this out because these are skills that take time to develop and maybe are harder to measure in terms of being able to say, yes, teachers have these competencies. But my feeling is that you don't build these competencies in teachers. More and more education is also focused on academic and holistic skills and the social emotional learning of children. How are teachers supposed to embody that if they have not had that opportunity? And that's very much going back to the intervention that we talked about, is really focused on those elements, teach well-being, but also the holistic skills. And I think if you can strengthen those holistic skills, if you can spend time teaching working with teachers to build those, you also then can take on board other professional development in a way that may be much more sustainable than before. So I don't know if that answered the question, but I think it's something that needs to be considered much more in how do you bring that into all professional development that you have with teachers.
Thanks so much, April. We've got one last very quick question, which I'll come to you with, Munia, and then we'll go back to Charlotte Bergen to wrap up. But this question comes from Nicola Tansley in the UK. And to put the question very briefly, is how do we incorporate children with special needs into teacher professional development? So often we're struggling just to look at all children and their learning development, but what about those children with special needs? Is this something you've struggled with in Bangladesh?
Yeah. I would like to say, like, the learning facilities in Rohingya response, we actually set quality benchmark across the sector for ensuring access to learning centers, addressing needs of the learners in the learning facilities like ramp and other arrangement for persons or learners with disabilities. But at the same time, in our curriculum, teacher training curriculum and training module, we have designed in a way where we actually put emphasis on child protection and also like learning needs of different children in this foundation training as well, the case study that I just presented. So in this training module, we incorporated like how teachers should address the need of the children who cannot see properly if they sit in the back. So in that case, the teacher training was like emphasized on like bringing those students maybe in the front benches so that they can see, or those who cannot have like frequent bowel movement and have like issues to go to toilet, nearby toilet, maybe they can sit beside the door, or like special arrangement should be in the classroom, or teachers must address and take measures accordingly for every individual children inside the classroom. And for these, actually we have quality benchmark tool under teachers professional development for the Cox's Bazar education sector, so that teachers are also aware these are the benchmarks that they have to actually need to ensure quality teaching inside the classroom for ensure better learning, quality learning. Thank you.
Fantastic. And what a wonderful way to finish this panel. Thanks once again to each of you. I could talk to you all day long, and we would resolve all these issues within teacher professional development among the four of us, I'm sure. But once again, thank you, and over to you, Charlotte.
Thanks so much, Chris, and all of you for such an important discussion, and thank you for all the questions coming in. We'll look forward to continuing this with you in many ways. To close, I just wanted to remind you about some resources from INEE to support teacher professional development efforts. And on the website, you can find open source materials to support teacher training in crisis contexts. So we have the TiCC training pack that many of you may know, which covers various competencies for teachers working in crisis contexts. And we also have a peer coaching pack, as we know how important that layer of support is. And again, these are open source materials that can be used in many different contexts and are available in many different languages and being used in many different settings. So please feel free to access those and to reach out to myself and my colleagues if you ever have any questions or need any support accessing and using the TiCC resources. The TiCC group continue to produce tools and resources to support this area of work. We're currently working on some case studies about how colleagues have been supporting teachers in crisis contexts. You've heard from some of those today. We've also collated resources produced to support teachers with the COVID-19 response, particularly thinking about distance education and distance learning, which will be available soon as a resource collection, along with a new technical note, which again focuses on the challenges teachers have faced in the last 2 years, in addition to the ongoing challenges they face in crisis contexts. So please do take a look at the INEE website to find these resources, and we'll be sure to email you with any new resources we have in the coming weeks and months. And one in particular to mention is a mobile mentoring curriculum, which also supports these other resources, and has been obviously very important at this time when many have been working at a distance. But to finish, I would thank you all wholeheartedly for joining us. I also wanted to let you know about the next event in the event series. We'll be sending an email out via INEE, but our next event is taking place at the UNESCO Teacher Task Force Policy Dialogue Forum. And this is going to be looking at policies supporting teachers in crisis contexts, and we'll share an invitation with you for that event on December the 3rd. And then in the new year, we'll be coming along with webinars focused on teacher management and school leadership, which I know are issues many of you are very passionate about. But as always, I just want to thank all of our speakers for their all of their contributions, and to our participants for all of the work you're all doing around the world, and your continuing support for teachers and the incredible work that they do. So thank you so much, everyone. We'll be sure to share the recording and the presentations with you all. Thank you.